The paradox of the first question, why is there something rather than nothing? At first glance, this might feel like a strange or even meaningless question, but it has been called the most fundamental riddle of philosophy. Because before we can ask about truth, morality, or the meaning of life, we have to ask, why is there life at all? Why does existence exist? Try imagining true nothingness. No stars, no atoms, no empty space. Not even the blackness you see when you close your eyes. Just nothing. But even as you picture it, notice how hard it is to separate nothing from something. An empty void, after all, is still a kind of thing. To imagine nothing at all may be impossible for a mind that itself is already something. Philosophers have struggled here for centuries. Parmenides, an ancient Greek thinker, argued that nothing cannot exist. If nothing is impossible, then something must always have been. Heidegger called it the most fundamental question of metaphysics, wondering why there should be being instead of sheer absence. Some modern physicists echo this too, suggesting that maybe the universe itself is the default, and nothing is the real impossibility. But the paradox deepens. If something always existed, what kept it from collapsing into nothing? And if things can emerge from nothing, what laws govern that strange event? The mind circles endlessly, like a dog chasing its own tail. Each attempt to hold onto nothing turns it into a something. Each attempt to imagine the beginning demands another beginning before it. And maybe this is the trap. Perhaps the question itself, why is there something, cannot be resolved because it asks us to think from a perspective outside of existence itself. And no human has ever stood outside existence. We are embedded in it, like fish trying to imagine water not being there. So we sit with the paradox, aware that both answers, something must exist or something came from nothing, sound equally impossible. And yet, here we are. And if the idea of nothing slips through our fingers, what happens when we turn inward and ask the same question about ourselves? The ship that never was. Now we face a riddle of identity, known as the Ship of Theseus. The story goes like this. Theseus, a hero of Athens, sailed on a great ship. Over time, the planks grew old and rotten, and one by one they were replaced. Years later, every single piece of wood had been swapped. So the puzzle is simple. Is it still the same ship? At first, the answer feels obvious. Of course, it's the same ship, just repaired. But imagine a collector gathered all the old discarded planks and reassembled them into a new vessel. Which ship would be the real Ship of Theseus now? The one Theseus sailed, kept alive through replacements? Or the one built from the original materials? This is not just about ships. It's about us. Your body is a living version of the puzzle. Cells die and regenerate. Your skin is replaced. Your bones renew themselves. Within about a decade, most of your cells have been swapped out. Are you still the same person you were 10 years ago? And what about your mind? Memories fade, personalities shift, new habits override old ones. In some ways, you are not who you were as a child, and yet you carry the echo of that person. Are you the same you, or are you a chain of cells pretending to be one? Some philosophers suggest identity isn't about material or memory, but about continuity, the unbroken thread of experience, even as everything changes. Others argue that identity is an illusion altogether, a convenient story we tell ourselves to make sense of the flux. The Ship of Theseus leaves us unsettled because both answers seem true. You are the same person, and yet you are not. And if identity can be questioned in space, what happens when we try to test it across time itself? The grandfather's paradox. Time travel invites one of the strangest riddles of all, the grandfather paradox. Imagine you travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. If that happens, you're never born. But if you're never born, then you could not have traveled back in time, which means your grandfather would meet your grandmother after all. The paradox spins in a loop, both possible and impossible at once. Some thinkers use this riddle to argue that time travel is logically forbidden. The universe, they say, protects itself from contradiction. Others imagine branching timelines, parallel worlds created whenever a paradox appears. In this case, your action doesn't erase yourself, but creates a new history, one where you never existed. Still others believe time is fixed, And even if you tried to interfere, your actions would only end up ensuring the past plays out exactly as it did. This is not just science fiction speculation. Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time is not absolute. It bends, stretches, and flows differently depending on speed and gravity. Some physicists believe closed time-like curves, loops in space-time, might be mathematically possible. But if they are, the paradox follows close behind, whispering riddles into the heart of physics itself. At its core, the grandfather paradox forces us to ask, is the future already written? If so, then even our attempts to change it are part of the script. But if it isn't written, then why does our logic crumble when we try to rewrite the past? The paradox lingers like a dream you can't wake from, an infinite loop folded into the very concept of time. But even if time itself resists our grasp, how can we ever be sure that the reality we are moving through is even real? The brain in the jar. Now imagine this. Your brain, floating in a jar, connected to wires. Every signal it receives, every sight, every sound, every taste, is fed in by a machine. To you, it feels real. You believe you're sitting in a chair, watching the world go by, but in truth, your world is only electric pulses, carefully simulated. How could you ever prove otherwise? This thought experiment, known as the Brain-in-a-Vat, is a modern twist on older puzzles. René Descartes once imagined an evil demon who could deceive him about everything he sensed. The movie The Matrix popularized the same idea with computers instead of demons. In each case, the riddle is the same. If all knowledge comes through perception, and perception can be faked, then how can we be certain of anything? Even science, which relies on observation, cannot fully escape this puzzle. Every test, every measurement, every experiment still passes through the filter of human senses and instruments. If the foundation itself could be manipulated, certainty dissolves. The unsettling part is that the brain in a jar scenario is not impossible in principle. As neuroscience advances, we already see how electrical stimulation can produce artificial sensations. Virtual reality creates increasingly convincing illusions. In theory, a perfectly programmed simulation could feel identical to reality. So we are left with the possibility that nothing we know can ever be absolutely trusted, that reality, as we perceive it, may be no more than a carefully woven dream. And if the very stage of life may be an illusion, what does that mean for the choices we believe we're making upon it? The free will puzzle. Finally, we come to the riddle of free will. Do you really choose your actions? Or are they the inevitable result of causes stretching back before you were born? Every decision you make feels deliberate. You pick tea instead of coffee. You choose to speak or stay silent. But neuroscience suggests each choice arises from brain activity measurable even before you become aware of it. Genetics shape your tendencies. Culture, upbringing, and chance encounters nudge you in certain directions. Every decision is a ripple in a chain of causes. If everything is determined, then freedom may be an illusion. We are like passengers on a train, moving where the tracks lead, while believing we steer. But if choices are not determined, then they must be random. And randomness is not freedom either. So where does that leave us? Some philosophers suggest free will is a useful illusion, necessary for morality and responsibility. Others argue for compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can coexist if freedom is defined not as ultimate independence, but as acting according to one's own desires, even if those desires were caused. The puzzle unsettles us because it touches daily life. Do we praise someone for their success if their path was determined before birth? Do we blame someone for a crime if their actions were inevitable? Without some notion of choice, the meaning of ethics begins to unravel. And yet, even in the uncertainty, life goes on. We keep choosing, or at least feeling as though we do. Perhaps that feeling itself is what matters, the experience of freedom, even if its foundations are mysterious. So here are the riddles. Why is there something instead of nothing? What makes you the same person through change? Can time be rewritten, or is it sealed? How can we know reality is real? And are we ever truly free? Each puzzle resists final answers. Each one pushes the mind into loops and mirrors where certainty dissolves. But that is what makes them so haunting. They invite us to rest not in solutions, but in wonder. As you drift into quiet thought, maybe even into sleep, these riddles remain unresolved companions in the night, whispering softly that the deepest questions of existence may never be answered, and that perhaps that is their purpose.